33, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so up to this we have done AGP slot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so here on that, I mean, from today we are going to be start from the motherboard connectors. This is a really important one, actually. That I mean, as because this power connector we are talking about, actually, this is not that the on the motherboard. These are the connectors are actually for connecting that the different components. I mean, to provide that the power to the different components. That actually this all of connectors, power connectors are coming from that the power supply. So this is you must need to be noted because I mean these are really important because when you're going to be deal with a computer system on that time you should have to know that okay which power connectors are actually providing that the voltage to which types of components. So here first of all that I mean you can look after that. Here we are having a 4-pin Molex connector. So this was the most common connector when we are dealing with that the when this connector actually is providing for that most of the cases it is provides that the power to the optical devices like that. I mean the CD DVD ROM you are having, like the hard disks you are having, like that power supply you are having. Uh, yeah, not only optical devices, but also, I mean, the main, yes, I'm talking about the 4-pin Molex connector, so it's correct. So this is actually to provide that, okay, the power to that the optical devices, different optical drives, like devices like that, the CD-ROM, DVD-ROM, hard disk, as well as for the system fan. That I mean, we know that in the system unit, we can have maybe two fans. So those fans connections are provided by using this 4-pin Molex connector. So this is that these days actually it is not that much common because these days that the components we are using like the optical devices like hard disk or DVD ROM. These all are coming with the SATA connectors. Okay, so I mean, these days we are using the SATA connectors instead of the 4-pin Molex connectors. So you will be see that most of the cases, this is the connectors now these days you will get with your power supply. Maybe one Molex power connector still can be still there, but this is the most used. I mean that this 15-pin SATA connector that is going to be used for connecting that your to provide that the power to the DVD ROM or your hard disk. So this actually we are using this the SATA connector, the 15-pin SATA connector. That is actually these days most of the hard disks and the DVD ROMs are coming with this technology because I mean this is much better than that the 4-pin Molex connector. But once upon a time we are fully depend on this 4-pin Molex power connector. Okay, so here the next one we are having that is the 20-pin Molex ATX power connector. Actually, these days it is 20 or 24. Okay, so take the note here, 20 or 24. So the four pins power connector. This is come as a 20 pin, and then the 4 pins power connector here comes separately. So based on that, the motherboard you're having, yeah, most of the cases you'll see that there are 24-pin power connector. But if that your motherboard is that the mini ATX, so there is a possibility that you're going to be have the 20-pin power connector. So this 20 or 24-pin power connectors is that the main power source for your motherboard. So we have actually discussed about the several motherboards already. So we can easily identify that okay, this is that the 24-pin Molex power connector, that where we are going to be connect that the this main power source, that from the power supply it will come, we are going to be connect this onto this 24 pin power connector. So this is what actually, this is one of the most important power connector actually, to provide that the main power source to the motherboard. Actually we are using this. So next one is that here, this is the 4 pin Molex P412 power connector. Yeah, so this is that the power connector we use for that the to give that the extra 12 volt to that the processor. Okay, so from the Pentium 2, I guess that, I mean, that the power the main power, with the main power source you're providing to that power to the motherboard, that's actually not enough for the processors, because the processors day by day the processor is actually boosting up with some of the features, or with some of that the improvements. So that the time actually, it has been found that actually the power you are providing to that the processor with that the main power source, that's not enough. So that's why there is an extra 12 volt power connector you need. So that is what actually the sign here, that this 4 pin power connector from the power supply is going to be provided the extra 12 volt to your processor. So if you're looking to a motherboard, then we also, I mean, we have also learned to identify that the 4 pin power connector. So we have seen that in different motherboards already. That, so here I see that this is the 4 pin power connector you're having, right? So here you're going to be connected that the 4 pin power connector, as well as that for every motherboard actually you are going to be find it. So mm, this is here, okay. So this is here that 4 pin power connector. So every motherboard you are going to be find this, okay, the 4 pin. So here we are having more than the 4, right? So there can be seen that the 8 pin, but you can use 4 pin power connector for, you can actually will be able to connect that the 4 pin here, the extra 4 pin for the other features. So this is what I mean. Every motherboard that you are going to be find it out. You can you'll be easily find it out that there is going to be a 4 pin power connector, that where you should have to provide this connector. You should have to connect this 4 pin power connector to the motherboard, so that your processor gets the extra 12 volt. So it's very important. So it is telling that is specifically for Pentium 4 processor motherboard. So that means it is started from actually Pentium 4. Okay, I was wrong that I said Pentium 2. So now here that this is that the 6 pin auxiliary connector, that the connector we are seeing that each actually, if I'm not wrong, this actually will not find it, this auxiliary connector. If I'm not wrong, this is actually providing that the power to the CD-ROM devices. Okay, if I'm not wrong, there is another one was there, 6 pin. I think there was another one auxiliary connector that was for floppy drive. Okay, so but I think that the floppy drive one is was that the 4 pin, if I am not wrong. So these days we do not have that the floppy drive, and also that the optical devices these days we are having, they are coming with that the more advanced power connectors. So that's why this auxiliary connector is almost, I mean, you'll not be able to see in the recent time of the power supply that actually we are using. So most of the cases that you are going to be, these are the common, right? The 15 pin SATA connector, the 4 pin power connector, 20 or 24 pin power connector. Molex also you are going to be see, maybe one connector is going to be there. Still it is going to be there. So even though, I mean, these days, I mean, the use of these actually has been reduced. I mean, has been, these days actually we are avoiding this 4 pin Molex connector, but it was that the one of the main connector, power connector for giving the power to the optical devices mainly. So the next slide here we are discussing about, that is the parallel ATA and serial ATA connectors. So this is what actually here we have already discussed them. We have already discussed them on the motherboard. We have seen that there are 40 pin. Here we are having that the parallel ATA drive connector. So I have already said to you maybe that here we are using that the PATA cable. Okay, that so that the PATA cable 40 pin. So that means you can understand that is going to be the 40 pin PATA. The cable, on the cable there is going to be the 40 pin connector, right? So it is going to be a bit bigger. So that is actually you are going to be installed into this connector, and you can see that there is a missing pin. If you're looking to that closely, you'll see that there is a missing pin there. There is a missing pin there, so that the on the cable that the connector you're going the female connector you're going to be see, then you'll be able to see that there is a less less a female connector. That means there is a less one, there is the whole place is going to be blocked over there. So you'll be able to easily match the pins with that the female connector, so that actually you'll be able to easily connect it on the board. Yes, the other part of the cable, it was actually the two, sometimes it can be three also. That from the same, in the same cable, that one part you're connecting. So any side connector actually you'll be able to connect with here. So say with the same cable, there can be the one or two connectors that with that actually you'll be able to connect that your optical drives, like that your hard disk, your DVD-ROM, CD-ROM. So that was the previous time technology. These days, you may not find that any that your PATA drive connectors, this type of connectors, you may not find. You'll be able to find it out maybe some of the motherboard still, but you'll not see that there is any use of this PATA cable. Okay, so because all of them are replaced with this your SATA connector. Okay, so these days we are using all the optical drives we are using onto the computer system, that is actually coming with the SATA connectors. So that is the reason behind it. It is the advanced one, and it is that the slim, and also it is that the very faster than that the previous connectors we have. But here with the SATA drive connectors that we are seeing here, that you can understand that we are having the 5 connectors or the L shape, right? You can easily find it with that. If you're looking to the shape of that, I mean, when you are going to be see on the motherboard, you'll see that in the connector that is actually L shape. Inside, you can see that there are different L shape. Okay, so that means when that the cable female connector, the cable female connector, you are going to be connect with this male connector. On that time, you should have to match this L with the cable connector. So when you're connecting them, so if you're matching that, it is going to be easily installed. Otherwise, you will not be able to plug in with that the connector. So this is what here one thing is that with each connector you'll be able to only connect one device. Okay, so in the previously that it was the, I mean, 2 or 3 optical drives could be easily installed with that the SATA connector, but with the SATA connector the cables are slim, and each of the cable, with that each cable you'll be able to connect only one optical drives, like that. With this, if you're connecting the SDD, for example, then the next one you're going to be used for that the maybe DVD-ROM drive. Okay, so yes, I mean, if you have the external hard disk, that means another hard disk. If you are having extra hard disk 1 and hard disk 2, then the second hard disk can be connected with that the other connector that is available here. Okay, so this is what actually that, I mean, the different that's why you'll see that more than at least minimum 4 SATA connectors are common in most of the motherboard, so that actually if you need, you can actually use the extra one. So this is what talking about, we are talking about that the SATA connector and PATA connector. So this is what that, I mean, the informations, I mean, it's very important that you should have to understand, and you should have to also remember that, I mean, we are using here the, if it is the PATA, then we are using the PATA connector, and the PATA, with the PATA connector, one side of the country is going to be connected on the motherboard PATA drive connector, and then the other part, you can have the 2 or 3 connectors. With that actually you'll be able to connect the hard disks as well as the DVD or CD-ROM. But these days we are not using it. We are using that the all the connectors these days replaced with that the SATA connector. So we are using the SATA cable. One part of the cable is going to be connected in the motherboard, and another part of the cable is going to be connected with that the hard disk or that DVD drive. Yes, I mean, it can happen that, I mean, you can deal with a old computer. Maybe you have a old computer into into your home. So on that time, you should need to be, I mean, you don't be confused. I mean that okay, if you're seeing that this type of connector, I mean, still there, yeah, you should have to remember that you should, if you're dealing with a computer system, new computer system, on that time you should have to be find it out that okay, what type of connector your hard disk or DVD drive has. Based on that, actually, you're going to be used that okay, the PATA cable or SATA drive cable, SATA drive connector. So this I what I said that the most of the cases these days you're going to be see the SATA. PATA is actually is just avoided. So here we come with the discussions about the back panel connectors. Yeah, so this is a really important topic as well, because we know that the back panel, that in the backside of our system unit on the desktop computer, we'll see that there are different kind of connectors are there. But most of us actually do not know that what are those connectors are for. Maybe a few of them we know, but some others we do not know. So we should have to be also, I mean, make sure that okay, what type of connectors can we have in the back panel, in the back panel of your motherboard or if, of your system unit. So if you're looking carefully here, that you will be able to see that, I mean, you are having that here, the PS2, that is actually one is for the mouse and one is for the keyboard. So that is what actually, I mean, this is that the PS2 was very common for connecting that the motherboard with the, I mean, your keyboard and mouse with that the with that the computer system. We used to connect by using this the PS2, but these days this is not also available. Maybe one of them can be seen onto that your back panel. That is only for showing you that okay, we are there, but these days we are not. So because all the keyboards and mouse these days you are going to be buy from the market, you'll see that all of them are actually replaced with that the USB connector, right? So that means we are going to be see the more USB connector, where actually we'll be able to connect the different devices or different type of devices with our computer system. So this is, you can see that we are having here the USB port. You are having that the USB port where you can actually connect that the different devices with this USB port. We can connect the different type of devices like mouse, keyboard, maybe your flash drive or USB drive, maybe printer these days, maybe scanner also. So these are all are actually connected. These days are replaced with the USB port, USB cable. What is the reason behind it? The reason behind it is that USB connectors are going to be much more faster than the PS2 technology. So here is another one that you can see that a connector is there. That is actually the HDMI connector. The maybe this is the high definition media multimedia interface. Yeah, high definition multimedia interface. So this is the high speed, one of the high speed port that can be actually used for that the high definition devices, like that if you're having the DVD player, right? If you're having that the advanced media player, advanced multimedia devices, then that these days actually those devices are coming with that the HDMI connector, because this is the most fastest one, like that, I mean, high definition or high graphical performance you'll be able to enjoy with this actually this type of HDMI connections, because they are very faster, they are very useful. I mean, when you are going to be use some high definition devices, multimedia devices. So this is also, I mean, not common. I mean, in on that each of that the maybe the desktop computer, it is some of that the caching, some of that the, I mean, motherboard, sorry, some of the motherboard is going to be, these are all the connectors are, remember that it's coming with your motherboard. Okay, so if you're buying a multimedia system, your system board, then it is going to be definitely there. Okay, so that is what I mean, it depends that which purposes you're buying that the computer system, and based on that purpose there is a there are different motherboards, and the different motherboards are going to be have the different facilities. So here you can see that we are having a here the VGA port, that is a VGA. So with that actually we are connecting the monitor, okay, that the display, the monitor we are having for the desktop computer, that you are going to be connect that your monitor the monitor there, a cable will come with that the monitor to that the motherboard. So you're going to be connect this VGA with that your monitor. So this is actually very common. So you can see that there is a, I mean, you can see that this is a female connector, and you should have to match it while you are going to be installed. So this is the D shape, right? Deep pin connector. So it is going to be easy. You even do not need to check the, I mean, sometimes you may not need to check that the pins or the holes for connecting that your BGA connector. Simply by matching that the shape, you'll be able to install it. So this is for monitor, and there is another one. You can see that that is actually the DVI port. So the DVI is also, it is going to be used for that your, I mean, for connecting that the different monitors or maybe the projectors, right? So you may know that with a single computer system you'll be able to use the two monitor. So of course that, I mean, you need that the both support. That means if you are having only the one VGA, these days actually DVI is not common on the motherboard. So you are going to be have only the VGA. So if you want to connect that the two monitors into your computer system, that suggests that you need to buy an external graphics card. So if you're buying an external graphics card, so you'll be easily able to connect the two monitors with your desktop computer system. And if you're looking to that here, then we are having that, okay, you can easily identify these two are actually that the USB connector similar to this, right? So there are so many, because most of the devices is this keyboard, mouse, maybe sometimes speakers, printer, scanner, right? And as well as that you're connecting that USB drive. Okay, too much noise in my area. I'm sorry. They're constructing the building beside my house. Too much noise. Yeah. So here, this is what that we are talking about. That this is the USB port where you are going to be able to connect the different USB devices, and this is the port that is known as the LAN port. Okay. So on that the LAN port, that the connector you are going to be connect here, that is actually the call it the RJ45 connector, or also sometimes it is called as the LAN connector, right? So what is the LAN connector is actually that is for local area network, right? So LAN, that is for actually giving that the connections of internet. So that if you are having that the internet connection at your home in the desktop computer system, you will see that a cable connector is connected into this into this port. So that is actually giving the connections to the computer, and actually it is making the connections with the internet. So this is that the RJ45 connector, and here we are having some MIDI connectors. So that is actually for sound system, different sound system, like you are having in out, right? So that are going to be used for your speakers. Maybe that some of them like the microphone, some of them others are there. If you are having that for they are actually, they can be have for the different reasons. If you are having that I mean 5:1 for example, or 3:1, the speakers you are having, they may use, they can be used for that purposes. So that the different motherboards are having that the different set of ports like that. I mean, and they have, each of them has that different use, right? So that is what actually you should have to know, that actually what are the these small connectors that we are having for the sound system, and what is that the use of each of them. So that is what actually what we have discussed. Here you will be get some of the informations about this the port connectors. So you can actually, I have already discussed with you. So you can read it once that you're saying here. So this is what with this we are finishing this the lecture number 2. Okay, so we have already finished that the lecture number 1 as well, right? In the CSC-347. Did we?
Yes, sir.
Right, right. Did I give?
But not all of it is not finished fully, sir. Maybe some slide are left.
Really? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
so
DL 46. Slide 46.
slide 46. Okay, so we know that. I mean, we are going to be have that the exam, right? For first term examination, we said that we are going to be have the exam on 23rd. For that the theory, right?
Okay, sir.
Alright,
Did
sir.
we declare
Sir,
it?
No, sir. Not yet.
No, no, sir.
uh,
Oh,
sir,
Maybe
we
you
haven't
declare your
discussed
another
this.
section, sir.
You didn't discuss us about the exam.
I see. Yeah, so we are going to be have that the exam on 23rd February. Okay, Tuesday next week. So
Okay. And
mm, yeah,
sir, and our exam time.
exam time is going to be in the class time. Okay,
Okay, okay,
in
sir.
our class time that time we are going to be have the written exam, and we are going to be planned for the viva. Right during that week, we are going to be have the viva in the class time. We are only 2 hours class in a week, so that is not enough for having that the viva, right? So maybe we are going. I'm going to be make a schedule for your viva, so you can come on that time. I mean, on the class time, all of you should need to be there in the class time after giving your attendance. If you're not having that your viva, you do not need to stay there. Okay, but other time that I mean out of the class time that the schedule we are going to be have on there only that the students are scheduled for the time they will come and give the viva. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yeah.
our lab exam will be held or not, sir?
That the lab exam is actually it is not going to be the first term examination, right? It is just going to be there for testing that okay what the things we have learned into this chapter or maybe till now that what we have learned. It is going to be only for having some assessment that okay you are studying it or you're learning it about them or not. You understand
Okay,
that?
sir.
So it is
Yes,
going
sir.
to be considered as class test, something like that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, but you know that I mean the marks are going to be very much important because that the final examination for that lab, if that the varsity is not getting open, then actually you will not be able to go for the final examination, right? But the class test marks is going to be with me, okay? Because it is going to be really difficult. You know that I mean when that the varsity will open on that time the previous semester's lab final examinations still remain, as well as that we have not go for any type of examination for the lab. We have only shown that different experiments. We discussed about the different experiments, but we did not have the practice in the lab, and we did not have the final examination. So on that time, it is going to be very difficult. When the varsity is going to be open, then all of us are going to be really busy with that the lab works. Okay, so it is going to be better. You know that I mean I do not know that I mean the second class test maybe I'll not be able to take because after this experiment all other experiments are going to be based on your assignment, that the assignment of work I'm going to be given. But this you can understand the lab name is that the hardware lab. So without the laboratory, how you're going to be practice them, how you're going to be actually I mean you should need to be need to be have that the hand-on practice. So it is actually quite difficult from here on to do it that the online class. The lab class is actually it's quite difficult to do online. So we are going to be fully depend on that what we are seeing on the screen, and maybe I can actually provide some of the videos for the different experiments, so you can actually look after them. Just I mean we are going to be proceed with those videos or maybe the lectures that we are having here, and then we are going to be uh, then when the varsity is going to be open, then we are going to be actually going to be have that the hand-on practices. So that is what I'm trying to tell that I mean the way that actually it's already on 1 year or almost 1 year that actually we are very nearby to that the 1 year of time that we are not doing anything into the university. So you can understand that when the varsity is going to be open on that time, how much busy you people are going to be, how much busy that your instructors are going to be. So I mean, so that is what actually I mean, we should need to be progress our work or the lab such a way so that actually we can reduce the pressure on the when the diversity is going to be open, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Sir,
I yeah.
one more thing.
Yeah.
Sir, our first term exam syllabus will be only lecture 1 and 2 or
No, yes, we have.
any.
I think I have discussed one day into your class as well. I do not know that you're telling no, I did not discuss anything. But I think that in
Sir,
one class I
for
have
347,
said
it's
about the exam.
lecture 1.
Right. I said that the lecture one and lecture two is going to be your syllabus for your first term. Right. I said that the lecture one and the lab, in the lab we have done the lecture two, so that the lecture one and lecture two is theory. These are for actually both theory lectures, but you can understand that we have spent enough time. I mean, we in the lecture number one into that theory class. That is actually a bit bigger chapter that we have. Doing till now we are doing, it did not finish. So that is what one of the advantage that we have taken here in the lab class, that we have actually discussed about the motherboard topic in the lab, but it is actually both useful. This is that the second number lecture is going to be useful for both of the theory and the lab class. Okay, so both in both cases actually we need it. It depends. I mean, in that the lab class you need the hand-on practice, you need that the you have to know everything that we have discussed in the lecture number two. So in the theory class also you should have to discuss, and in the lab class also you should have to practice. So this is the chapter is really important, because as I said many times that the motherboard is the heart of the computer system. So if you understand the motherboard, that means you'll be understand easily that okay, how a computer system works. Okay, this is the lecture is going to be your first term, for the first term, that CSC 347, right? The lecture one and lecture two. These are the two lectures we are going to be considering for our first term examination of CSC 347. And the CSC 348, that the experiment number one, and this we are considering experiment number two. So these are going to be that your class test. Okay, that the experiment number one and experiment number two. Actually, now we are going to be now today's class. We are going to be now deal with that the experiments now we are having. Okay, so that the experiments number two document we are going to be review, but that is actually we need to do the hand-on practice. So we are going to go very fast on the experiment document that we are having. So is it clear that, I mean, for theory exam, that the lecture number one and this lecture number two, right, that motherboard and buses, these are the two chapters we are going to be study for the first term examination. Is it clear?
Yeah, okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think that, I mean, this is actually maybe that one of the reason that, I mean, we are doing the class here in the early morning at 8:30, and that is what actually that we did not able to finish. I do not know that why we did not finish this, but in the other section, the lecture number one and lecture number two both has finished. I mean, we had finished in the last week itself. Maybe they got an extra class, right? I think they got one extra hour class than you, because they have a class on that the Wednesday, but you do not have any class on Wednesday. So semester start with the Wednesday, right? So that is the reason actually they progressed one class compared with you. I understand now. Okay, so here we will first going to be get some ideas or that the questions I have said to you earlier. Maybe let me revise it again. That is my good practice. That, I mean, I always try to give you that I repeat these comments actually, that for the things, the exams, or that the topics or the date of the exam. So otherwise I could miss that. I mean, I did not declare the exam date into your class. So our lab the class test we have said that is possible in the next week, because next week you are having the holiday, the 21st February. So we are going to be have it on the 28th. Okay. I think that we are going to be approached with the Viva. Okay, not only that the Viva, or it can be there 30 minutes, some multiple choice answers maybe in the class test is going to be there. Okay, so that we can decide. I mean, into that. I mean, it can be the Viva. It can be that the multiple choice questions, right? Or it can be some of the short questions as a written exam. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, yeah, for the CSC 347, that for the lecture 1 and lecture 2, for that the both lectures I have provided the lecture notes beside these slides. Have you seen them? You know that. I mean, there are two files for the lecture number 1. There are two files for the lecture number 2 into your Facebook group.
Yes, sir.
So please don't be confused with that. I mean, your um, by the files, that why we are having the two files, that for the lecture number 1 and lecture number 2. Remember that. I mean, one file is that what we are proceeding with the slides into the class. One file is for that, and another file is for the supporting that the, I mean, slides I have actually prepared by following that the lecture notes. So you should have to study both. I mean, of course, that you are going to be um, uh, study with, I mean, by following the slides. So when you are following the slides, you should have to go to that your lecture notes, and on the lecture notes you have to study everything. Get it or not? If something is not there into that the lecture notes, then you should have to collect the information from the internet, take the notes, and then study it. Get it or not?
Yes, sir. So actually, mostly going through the slide.
No, mostly you are going to be go through that the lecture notes. I said that the slides are only for support. I mean, that what are the topics we have discussed. The slide does not have that the, I mean, detailed information of anything. Get it or not? So that's why you should have to be make sure that you are dealing with that the not only the slides but also with that the lecture notes. That's why actually separately I provide the notes. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir, got it.
All of you, can you please unmute your microphone? Okay, it's good. Please mute. Okay, so I think let's have a 5 minutes break. Okay,
All right, sir.
so we are going to be start. I mean, we are first going to be get some questions from the lecture number 2, and then we are going to be get some questions from the lecture number 1. So we are going to be do it in this class itself, so that you can start preparation for your first term examination. Okay. So after 5 minutes at 25:26, we are going to be start. Okay, 9:26.
All right, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then let's start that. I mean, in the lecture two, what you are going to be studying, let's discuss here. So, uh, yeah, so that is going to be that the question is common for the lecture one and lecture two. Define motherboard, right? That means you should have to give that define motherboard means that I mean it's not only the definition that you're going to be tell that okay motherboard is the heart of the computer system, or maybe it is made of fiberglass, brown or green, typically with a mesh of copper lines. These lines are electrical circuit through which power data and control signals level. No, you are going to be give. I mean, if it is telling you to define something, then you have to give the appropriate information for that answer, for that clue, for that the keyword. So when it is going to be ask you the define motherboard, it is going to be come with minimum 5 marks. Maybe it can come more in the first term examination, midterm examination when the define question comes. So you should have to make sure that at least you're writing 10 solid sentences to represent that the keyword for defining. Okay, so that the motherboard we have discussed into that the lecture number one, the define motherboard. So we have discussed about motherboard in the lecture number one and lecture number two as well. So you should have to combine them and take the notes that okay, now what is going to be the appropriate information for the motherboard. So define motherboard, and these are the three ways that the components can be connected with the motherboard. Okay, so it is one. It can be the integrated. It can be that attached through the connector socket slots on the board. It can be that attached to it through the back panel or front panel. So that I mean you should have to know these three way that how that the things are going to be connected. Okay, with the motherboard and what are the examples for them. So it is very much important that you know them. And from the form factors of motherboard, you know that there are two types of motherboards. There are ATX and BTX. So ATX has that the varieties of the models, varieties of that the types of the ATX motherboard. So you should have to know their at least these four types that we have discussed in the class. So you should have to know the name of them. Okay, that okay, what are the type like that? This is the standard ATX. Okay, so advanced technology standard. So mini ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX, information technology standard. So this name you should have to know, and then their size you should have to know. And the description is only for I mean you I mean some of the descriptions are there that only you should study. Actually, there are nothing much difference rather than that the open architecture that what I said that the more options are going to be there if the board is bigger than the smaller motherboard. The standard motherboard is going to be have the more connectors, more slots, more sockets to actually install that the external components. You should have to know these sizes. Okay, this is very important. So this is the different motherboards we have talked about. So I have already said to you that I mean you should have to be identify the components of the motherboard. That is coming into this slide itself. But here that I mean four different ATX motherboards based on that list I have tried to show, and I have tried to compare that. I mean we have seen that most of the main components of the motherboard is actually available in each of the motherboards. So we have seen them. Similarly, that ATX, the BTX has also the several types. So at least that the three types we have discussed here. So you should have to know their name and you should have to know their um, sizes. Okay, so that is actually important. And
Lost your network connection? What's wrong with it? Wow, wow.
forget, then another you can actually write down. But it is going to be useful that if you are actually taking the notes with the keywords and you are remembering the keywords, and then actually you are trying to understanding that okay, what are the main difference for the keywords you are having. Then the components on the motherboard, there are actually so many components on a motherboard, but these are the components list that actually we are gone through into this lecture. So you should have to know that what are they and what are actually the reason actually they are there and what are their functionality. So for studying about the details, actually we have one by one we have gone through. So this is what the identifying purpose I saying you that I mean not only this motherboard but also you should have to study for identifying the different components of the motherboard. You should have to study with that at least three motherboard figures. Other two you can install. You can download from the internet. So this is really important that actually you are able to identify the most of the common components of the motherboard. Okay, so I will ask you to not to go for any gaming motherboard. So because the gaming motherboard is going to be not really helpful to identify the components. But yes, I mean if we can easily if we go through this type of motherboards, standard ATX motherboard, then actually it is going to be easier for us to identify the different components of the motherboard, and then it is going to be easy to actually understand that okay, what are the components we are having into the gaming motherboard. Remember, the gaming motherboard, the game is going to be the 3D games, so you need that the more graphical power, you need the more RAM, you need the high speed CPU, and the cooling system is going to be much more higher than the standard motherboards. So this is what actually you should have to do it. That I mean, you should have to practice with the different the main components of the motherboard. Remember that in the Viva, most of the time I'm going to be spent here. I'm going to ask you, for example, that okay, find it out that where is that the CPU socket. Find it out what is this. Okay, so you should have to tell that okay, this is the not bridge, this is the south bridge. So I'm going to ask you that okay, what is it and what is it. So what is the difference between them? So you should have to answer them. Okay, what is it? So why we need it? For giving the extra 12 volt power, which connector is going to be needed? So that is what actually you should have to answer. Ready or not? So this way you should have to study all of the main components of the motherboard. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. So the next question can be here to define the processor socket. So when you're defining the processor socket, you can simply tell that okay, the processor is going to be installed or mounted on the motherboard in a socket, and that it is actually most important thing that the CPU or processor you're going to be installed onto the motherboard that is actually need to be compatible with that the CPU socket. So that the CPU socket you're having on the motherboard, based on that actually you're going to be have that the CPU and that the CPU can be installed onto that CPU socket. So there are three types of CPU socket is there. So you should have to identify them, and you should need to be know that okay, what is the difference between them. So LGA, PGA, and BGA. So this is also you're going to be a bit more discussed while we are going to be deal with that the processor experiment into our lab class. So here these are the two companies that you should have to always remember, that AMD and Intel. They are actually the top CPU manufacturers. So it is a common question can be asked you into the Viva that okay, which manufacturers are I mean top for manufacturing the CPU. So this is the processor socket, the different processor socket for Intel and the AMD that we have studied. So you should have to know that actually what the sockets are there and which sockets are going to be used for which type of processors. Yeah, and of course that I mean it's better that you are having some ideas by studying them that okay, what are the difference among them. Similarly that for the AMD, and this is the memory slots. So define the memory slots. So in case of that the memory slots, you're going to be tell that okay, these are the slots are going. Memory slots is a place where actually you're going to be installed that the RAM. Basically that we are using the DRAM, right? DRAM technology, that the DRAM stick is going to be installed into this type of slots. But there are different types of DRAMs are there. So there is the different pin configuration. So on the motherboard you're having that the memory slots, right? So based on that the memory slots you're having, you should have to choose that your RAM. Okay, so there are different types of RAM. So you should have to know that actually which RAMs are going to be have that how many how many pins. And this is only for understanding. This is the coming chipset, so it is a very important thing that you should have to know that what is the
Okay.
defined chipset or what is chipset, and then there are two main chipset in the chips in the chipset. So explain them or briefly discuss about them. So you should have to talk about the north bridge and south bridge, and you should have to tell that actually what is the purpose of having the north bridge and south bridge on the motherboard. And when I are discussing this block diagram, I have said that these two is, you should have to practice. You should have to draw at your home minimum 3 to 4 times. Okay, so that actually each and everything you can easily and remember. So you should need to be have a snapshot of this chipset block diagram into your memory, so that you can easily understand that in a computer system how the things are actually connected. So this is a very good way to learn it out that actually what a motherboard is having. What a how that the motherboard components, main components, are going to be communicated with each other. Everything you should have to study very carefully. Like not only that the name of that the boxes or the slots or that the PCI slots. So you should also know that not only that the north bridge and south bridge, but also you should have to know that the all buses name, right? So it is very important. Similarly here, and yes, there are different types of buses are there, but these three are common, right? So that the processor bus, memory bus, and IO bus. So you should have to know that okay, what are the to know that what are the purposes of having these buses. This is for only understanding, very basic thing. And then this is the thing actually you should have to know that what is the define that the oscillator. Actually, this is going to be a question is going to be there, the system clock. So that the system clock is related with this, that the crystal, the system crystal, or that actually the speed for determining the actually CPU speed. Actually, you need to be know about that the quartz oscillator, that what it does. And this is actually I provided for only understanding that the buses listed throughput. So you should have to know that actually what are the buses are there. It is really important that what are the buses are there. So I said it that you should have to modify it. So you should have to know that actually what are the purposes of this having the buses, or what are the bus type, what are the address lines, what are the bus frequencies, what are the throughput. This is maybe not actually important for your exam, but you should have to know this actually, that what are the type of buses are there, okay, and what are the purposes of having them. I have provided this table only for understanding that actually what can be the difference among them. So this the question is going to be come into your lecture number 1, that define the software, hardware, and firmware. So here actually we have discussed about firmware a bit, and the BIOS, CMOS, these are actually the firmware, right? So we should have to know that what is a BIOS, okay, and why we need the BIOS, and what is the difference, what is CMOS, what is the difference between the BIOS and CMOS, that you should have to study, okay. Then you are having here that the motherboard connector. So yes, when you are going to be talking about the connection, when you are talking about the connector, then you are going to be get these three types of connections. Okay, so you should have to know that this is the onboard connection, internal connection, and external connection. So you should have to know that okay, why we need these three types of connections, and what are the different devices are going to be connected through these connections. So you should have to know each of them. And this is the again that the motherboard identifying the different connectors on the board. And here, yes, so that is we are talking about the slot. So what is the slot is onto that motherboard? Okay, so you should have to know that the most common types of slot, like the PCI slot, the peripheral component interconnect. So this is very important that actually you are learning each and every short forms with that. The full meaning of that each of the short form. Okay, so you should have to know that PCI means the peripheral component interconnect. Then PCI means the peripheral component interconnect express. Okay, so you should have to know them. So you should have to know that okay, what is the PCI slot? What is the use of the PCI slot actually, for which devices, which external cards actually we need the PCI slots, which for the which external card we need the PCI express slots, and what is the difference through that the PCI to the PCIe. So this way you have to study these slots. So we say that the accelerated graphics port slot. So these days we are not telling it as a AGB slot. we are talking about the PCIe X 1632 as well as 64. So this is actually table showing that the bus list for the slots that we are having with that their maximum transfer rates. So it's better that you look after them. So it is going to be understandable that how that the buses for the slots are day by day improving in case of graphical performance. And this is only for understanding. And this that is the use of these connectors, the power connectors we are having. How many pins these connectors have? How much volt they actually support? So you should have to know them. And this is a common thing that you should need to be identify the parallel connector and SATA connector. You should need to know that okay, what are the type of cables are going to be used, and for connecting with which with a cable, which type of from a connector to a device, which device actually will be able to connect by using these connectors to the cables. So you should have to know them. What you should have to know them that what is the difference between the ATA cable and the SATA cable. Okay, so you should need to compare about these connections. Then this is the last one is the back panel connector. So in the back panel connector, you should have to identify that each of the connectors that the back panel connectors can have. So that it is important not only identify them but also that you understand that which port is going to be used for which purposes. So that is what actually is very important that you should have to study them. Clear?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
So you understand that what are the things you need to study from this lecture, right?
yes, sir.
Okay, let me open that lecture number 1. So in the lecture number 1, you said that we did not finish. How much we have done?
Till 46.
46. So that means up to port, right? We are discussing
Yes, sir.
about the port. Okay, so I think that let's finish it because exam is nearby and we should have to get the questions for this lecture as well. So we are actually discussing about the different ports, right? So we have said that there are different varieties. So what is the reason that we are having the ports? So we say that the reasons behind it that we want to use actually, we want to connect the different external devices with the front panel and back panel ports. So we have said that there are different types of ports are there, like the connectors can be the D-shell connector or DIN connector. We have learned what is keyed. And then we have said that there are 4 types of ports are there, 2 types of ports are there, standard ports and the specialized ports. So we have seen that there are 4 standard common ports, 4 common ports are there. These are actually the standard ports, serial ports, parallel ports, USB ports, firewire ports. Then we have seen that there are some of the specialized ports. So here, this is a picture that it is giving a detailed information about that the front panel and back panel connectors or ports that actually we are having. So it is going to be better that actually if you're looking to these figures and you are just trying to learn that okay which connectors are there and for what purposes these connectors are there. So it is a very important thing that you understand that actually which connectors are for which devices. So you should have to know them. So study very nicely. Then here this is actually I have just tried to separate the ports that okay for that the several reasons that we are having that the separate type of ports. What are the pin numbers? What are their look? How they look, and how you are going to understand to connect with the cable with these ports. So that's why I separately place them. Okay. So this is the video port. You can see that actually the 15-pin female D-shell connector. So you should have to. This is actually the VGA port that actually we have already studied that on the motherboard lecture last line. So this is the parallel port. This is the parallel port can be used for that scanners, printers, something like that. The serial ports are there, so that the different serial ports can be used like the D-shell. Serial ports are there that can be used for example, so serial ports can be used for the different reasons. You can see that there is 9-pin mail port, so that the serial port can be used for connecting that the mouse keyboard. These days actually we are not using anymore the serial ports actually these days here, that the different type of serial ports we are having these days. Actually we are not having that much of serial ports into our computer system, but most of them are having the parallel port. Okay. And the PS2, we already said that the PS2 also we are not using that much, but you should have to know that there are 5 pins and 6 pins connectors. So that the 5 pin, it can come with the 5 pin, it can come with the 6 pin. But these days actually we are not using this type of port. So these are actually I'm placing here for separately, so that actually you can study them, you can understand them, actually you can identify them easily. So this is the keyboard that is coming with the 6 pin, right? But can be a larger 5 pin in an older computer or keyboards. So this was the older one, this is the newer one, but still now, I mean, currently we are not using them. So the USB, so you can see that the bus mouse, so 19 pin shell, right? So what I was trying to tell that the mouse also having that the 9 pin, right? The digital connectors. Actually, these serial ports, once upon a time, it was used for the mouse, for giving the connections to the mouse. Here also that, I mean, we are having that the ports. So this is a common one. So it is better that you study about this in a detail, because this is a very important port we are having into our in the back panel or front panel, that the USB port. So you should have to understand that, I mean, it has that the several versions like 1.0, 1.12. These days we are having the 3. That I know that 3 is the latest, but after that any other versions came into the market or not, I don't have that the current information. So you should have to know that what are the versions are there. So what is the difference between these versions are? So if you're coming from the upper versions, you will find that the speeds are actually increasing, that the transmit speeds are going to be increased with that. So that means if you're having that the 3.0, for example, into your desktop computer system, that means it is going to be able to transfer the data between that your device and computer system very faster. Okay, that is actually that the versions, update versions, you can get the support. These are the IEEE 1394 ports. So what is the use of this port? The firewall ports. So these are the firewall ports are can be used for the different purposes. These firewall ports are especially you are going to be used for the high speed devices for transferring the data. Okay, so these are firewall ports are going to be used for the different cams. For example, camcorder you are having. The camcorder having is that the firewall port. So that the firewall ports is actually faster for sending the data. You need it because you know that when you're going to be use a camcorder, that is going to be actually record the video with the very high definition, so that the size of the file is going to be huge to transfer from that your device to that your computer system. So you need that the better type of cable with the better speed, so that actually you can transfer them quickly. So that the different ports are there. So we have seen already that the network ports or Ethernet ports. So the game ports. So you can see that, I mean, you're having that the Ethernet port. So these are the Ethernet ports you're talking about. We have already said that this is for having the internet connections, right? So so this is the digital connector you are saying, that is actually for playing the games. Okay, so that, I mean, you can use it for maybe the joystick. If you would like to connect the joystick with that your computer system, so this is the port you are going to be used. So so you should have to, I mean, just study them, that what is the purpose of these different connectors that we are having here. So the token ring we are having here, so we can see that the token ring was there. That is actually older technology. That where actually we are having that J45 connector, as well as that one digital connector. That is also for actually that your game playing the connecting that the joystick, something like that. Then you are having the sound card. So that's what I say, that, I mean, the sound card is going to be have a joystick or MIDI port for playing the games as well. And as well as that, you are going to be have some smaller ports, different ports. So here you are having 5. In some of the sound cards you can have more. Okay, so these are the coming with the sound card, that external sound card if you're having, or maybe the built-in sound card that the back panel we have seen. So each of that the point has that the different reasons to be here. So you should have to know that what are the reasons that, I mean, these connectors are there. Then this is the modem. Actually these days we are not using it. that is actually, you can see that RJ11 port, right? So that the RJ11 port is used for the telephone. If you are having a land phone into your home, that the land phone is having this type of connector into that. The phone, you're going to be find this type of connector, and actually the cable you are using, that is a twisted pair cable, and that the cable connector is also going to be have that the RJ11 port, RJ11 connector. So that is going to be actually going to be used. So this one actually, the telephone actually we have used for having the internet once upon a time, but these days we are not using. These days the standard is RJ45 connector that we have seen already. That this is the RJ45 connector port that are actually will be able to connect the RJ45 connector. And here we are having that the so this is a very nice table that I should appreciate you to study it. I mean, so you can see that the different ports name has been given here, and what is that the common devices that the ports are going to be used, right? So you can see that the serial, like that the external mouse, external modem mouse. So that was I was talking about mouse. Previously we used to connect with that the serial port, but these days we are using that the USB device. In the middle the PS2, and now it is actually the USB port. So this is what the common connector is made, DB9, and then the video. So that port video, so that is actually that the, they say the VGA connector, right? Or maybe that we can say that DVI connectors. So these are the connectors actually used for the video port. We call them video ports, and you can use that for the monitor, the VGA, DVI can be used, right? So the female and 15 DB15 and 3 rows pins are going to be there. And then the parallel, this is the parallel port is going to be there like this one. This is the parallel one. So you can see that printer, it is written itself here. So then you're having the keyboard, mouse. So this is that the 6-pin minute. So it is talking about that the I mean PS2, right? That you can see that the PS2 for mouse. So it has actually, it was a common thing that on the plate, the back panel on the plate, you will see that the icon has been drawn, that as a mouse or as a keyboard. So you'll be easily identify that, okay, which one is for mouse, which one is for keyboard. As well as, I mean, you can see that other places also you can see that, I mean, they are given some of the, I mean, icons. It is actually drawn onto the plate. Okay, so I mean, by seeing them, you'll be able to easily understand that, okay, which component I'm going to be actually connect here. So then the internal modem, this we are not using, so it can be avoided. That the USB, it is very important. Look at the printer, scanner, digital camera, CD, DVD drive, that can be actually connected so that the USB port. And then IEEE 1394. So this is actually for camcorder, camera, printer, so and so on. So this is the known as the IEEE 1394 port. And then the network. So we said that the RJ45 jack. So that is not for the device. That is for actually connecting the internet. Okay. And then we are having here the cables. So yes, we can see here, we can understand that the connectors till now that we have discussed, these connectors we need so that actually we can connect an external device with it. So how we are going to be actually install that the external devices with this the connectors or ports that we have seen. Of course, we need some cables, right? So the cables are used to connect exterior devices to the system unit via the ports. So yes, both of the cables are going to be have that the two ends, right? Sometimes one end can be fixed up with that the device, or sometimes actually the cable is going to be given you so that actually you can connect both ends with that device and the computer system. So now you can see here that we are having the one end of the cable is attached to the device, and the other end has a connector that is attached to a matching connector on the port, right? So like that, I mean the VGA, we are not having the VGA cable here, so we are having that the DVI actually, right? So VGA, so in the cases of the video connectors, so some monitors are coming with that, okay, one part of the cable is already fixed with that the monitor, but these days actually the cables are separated, so you should have to connect the both ends. So yes, I mean this is the part that, I mean, the DVI, this the cable is going to be used for connecting with that your DVI port if you are having, right? And this is that the USB, I mean cable that through that the USB cable we can understand one side of it we can actually install into our computer system. and other part like the keyboard, mouse. If you are having the wired keyboard and mouse, then you will see that the mouse, one part of the cable is actually connected to the device already. So this is the rest of the part you should have to connect with the external, I mean, back panel connector or the front panel connector. So this is the firewire port that I was talking about. So this is the fastest one actually, that for transferring the data from the device to the computer system, like the camcorder you are having. So that the camcorder can have this type of firewire ports, and it is going to be very useful. I mean, this is a very useful cable for transferring the big size of data. And this is the Ethernet cable. So this is the RJ45 connector that I was talking about. I mean, if you're having the internet connection at your home, so you'll see that this connector, of course, it is there. And then this is the telephony line, right? So that is the RJ11. So that actually we used previous time for internet purposes, but these days we're not using it for the internet purposes or in our computer. Then power supply we are having. Yes, this is a very important part. We have already learned into that the lecture number 2 that there are different types of power connectors are there. So that is actually coming from the power supply. That the different connectors we have said. Look that here it is. So these the cables are coming with that. So what is that? Why that we need the power supply? Because we understand that our computer system basically it is using the DC current. You know that the digital computer is a digital system. So the digital system needs here that the DC current. So but the current we are using at our home, that is the alternative current. So that the alternative current should need to be converted to the DC current. So you should need to be provide the computer system the DC current. So the power supply is going to be that the middleman who is going to be actually convert that the current to that the AC to DC. So that is what it's telling, that computer secure direct current and DC power provided by converting alternative current. Okay, the DC current means the direct current and AC current means the alternating current. Okay, so the DC power provided by the converting alternating current from a wall outlets or batteries. So that is what I mean, that the cable connections you're giving to that your home, I mean, wall outlets. So actually you are giving a cable so that actually you are providing that the alternative current to that the power supply, and that the power supply is actually converting the current from that the AC to DC. Okay, so that AC to DC is converting, and actually it is supplying the current, the DC current to that the different components of the computer system. So remember, this is not the only job to of the power supply to convert the current AC to DC, but also that the different components you are using onto the computer system, the different components required the different amount of voltage. So that is also one of the job of the power supply, that actually he is going to be convert that the current AC to DC, and he is also going to be provide the required power for the different devices. So that is actually the job of the power supply. So it is talking about that, okay, this power supply unit we are talking about, that is used for the desktop computer, and we are using that the AC adapter. We know that is going to be, we are using it for that laptops that we are having, and also that some of the handheld devices like that, maybe it can be the tab or something like that. So this is what the AC adapters, we know that through that the AC adapters also we are connecting that the alternative current, and is going to be actually is going to be convert that the current from AC to DC. And then yeah, it has that the extra power compared with this one, that actually it is going to be stored that the energy, so that actually even though you are outside of your home, that actually you'll be able to use your laptop through this your charged battery. So that is what exactly that I mean, the two types of the power sources that actually we are giving that the powers to the computer system. So that for this is for the desktop unit that we call the power supply unit, and this is for the laptop that is actually called the AC adapter. So this is how actually we are finishing here the lecture number 1. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now you can write down the questions that what you should need to study for that lecture 1. Yes, it is coming with first one, that define computer, and briefly discuss about fundamental functions or fundamental parts of a computer system. Briefly discuss the fundamental functions or fundamental parts, PARTS, of a computer system. So this is going to be, what is a computer? You're giving the definition, then you're drawing this figure, and then you're explaining it briefly that what is input, what is processing, what is output, what is memory. So that you should have to draw it. Okay. If it is asking to you define computer
Sir,
system,
could you repeat the first question, sir?
yeah, sure. I said
Yes,
that define a computer, or what is a computer, right? And um, briefly discuss, right? Shortly discuss. That means short. Brief means short. Briefly discuss about the fundamental functions or parts, 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 fundamental parts of a computer system. Okay. If this question comes, then you are giving the definition of a computer, then draw this figure and explain that what is input device, give an example, what is processing, give an example, what is output, give an example, what is storage, give an example. So I mean briefly discuss about them. Okay. And then the define software, hardware, device driver, and firmware. Software, define software, comma hardware, comma device driver, and firmware. The next question for you: define what is booting? What is booting? Briefly discuss about cold booting and warm booting, or discuss the two types of booting. Name and discuss the two types of booting. What is booting? Name the types of booting and briefly discuss. So the question can be asked you in a different ways, right? So you should have to know here that what is booting, what is the cold booting, and what is the warm booting. That is the simple thing. And the next question is the define post. Define post. So you should have to tell that what is bar on self-test. And this is the three main components of a computer system. So briefly discuss about, discuss or briefly explain three main components of a computer system. So if it is coming, then you should have to list the name, that what are the three main components, the CPU, memory, and I/O device. Now for each of them, you should have to give the sufficient information. So this is going to be considered as a broad question that explain the three main components of a computer system. So you should have to tell appropriately that what is the central processing unit, what are the types of central processing units like that ALU and the CU, what is ALU, what is CU, that you should have to do it at the central processing unit. Maybe you can give the example of central processing unit, that okay, Intel Core i5, i7, the examples of the CPU. So then you're talking about what is memory. Then there are two types of memory, the primary memory and secondary memory. Then example of primary memory, example of secondary memory. What is input device? What is given the definition for the input device? Give that the 5 input device examples. Output device. What is output device? Give the 5 output device examples. So this way that you should have to answer this. So that is what actually we have done here. One by one, we have briefly discussed what is CPU, right? So we have mentioned only the name of them. We said that what is multi-core processor, and we said get some Intel and AMD processor example. And then memory, we have said that what is the memory, and this is the information that you should have to know, that to the units with that the bytes and bits. So you should have to know it. And yes, I mean we should discuss about that what is a memory, and then we say that what is the difference that you should have to start with, that show the differences between the main memory and the secondary memory, or primary memory and the secondary memory. Discuss about the main memory and the secondary memory. Primary memory is actually much more appropriate, I guess, that primary memory and secondary memory. So again, here you should have to give that the minimum 5 comparisons between them. Then here we are having that what is the input devices for, and the 5 input devices name, and what is the output device, the 5 output devices name. That is how that the first part has done. Now it is the the second part. So you should have to know that define the system unit and discuss about the 6 basic system units and compare them, right? what is system unit or define system unit, and discuss about the 6 basic system units, and compare what is the main comparison between them, or compare them. It can be asked like that. It's for understanding, for understanding only. But this table actually you need to know. So you should have to be, you should need to be tricky, right? That okay, how to find out that the number ASCII code, how to find out that the alphabet ASCII code, how to find out that the symbolic ASCII code. So that is what actually you must need to be tricky, right? I have already given you the idea that actually how you can easily find them. So this is what it is telling, that how the ASCII works. So in that case, you should have to draw this figure, and you should have to explain that okay, if an instruction given, then the electrical signal will come to the system unit, and then how it is going to be actually converted to the ASCII code, and then it is going to be stored. Result is going to be stored into the memory, and then it is going to be displayed onto the monitor. So you should have to know that how to draw this and how to explain this. We have dealt with 4 examples with the 3+5 instructions. So these are actually very, very important for your first term examination. But you should have to understand that the instructions, that 3+5 is going to be changed for the exam if it is coming into the exam. The 4 examples that are there with the 3+5, all of them you should have to study. You should have to understand them. You should need to know that how to explain them after drawing. So there is a common question. There can be a question can be coming to a first term examination from these 4 examples. So now look at what I say, that the system board, right? That is the motherboard, right? That we have also the discussions we have found into that our lecture number 2. So I said that actually study this part as well as study on the lecture 2 and make a single note. And here you should have to also know that what is socket, what is slots, and what is the bus lights. So that is what actually I said, make a your own notes by studying this part and the lecture 2 define motherboard part. This is talking about the microprocessor, the defined microprocessor, defined system board. That can be the questions here. Defined instruction cycle, right? So this is also very important, that what is an instruction cycle and what are the stages. 4 stages are there. So you should have to list them. You should have to know that what are the explanation for them. And yes, this is the example, that the second example for 3+5. So you should have to understand that how the how an instructions is going to be, how an instructions like 3+5 is going to be executed, or the operation is going to be completed through that the instruction cycle. So you should have to draw this figure, and you should have to write down the steps onto the figure itself. So if this question comes, you should not, you should write it, like that, the way, simply that the figure. You should not need to explain anything, because the explanation you are giving here itself, okay? So that the instructions, if it is coming, the instructions number, instructions are going to be changed. So you need that the ASCII table informations very much here. So here we are having the 2 types of microprocessor chips. So you should have to know that what is chips is for, right? And what is the meaning of word, and what is the CISC and RISC chips. So what is the full form of them, and what is that the main difference among them. Then we are having the specialty processor. So the question is going to be that define a specialty processor. So you should have to know that what is the definition for the specialty processor, and explain the different types of specialty processor. So you can talk about the co-processor, parallel processor, and smart card processor. So you can actually briefly discuss about them, that okay, what is the purpose of co-processor, what is the purpose of parallel processor, what is the purpose of smart card processor. So you can actually have a discussion. Here, this is talking about the memory. You have already learned that what is a memory, and here you should have to be, very much clear that it is talking about the memory chips. So if it is asking to you that explain the different types of memory chips, if it is saying that, if you are saying in the question that okay, explain the different types of memory chips, then you should have to understand that you should have to explain these 3: RAM, ROM, and CMOS. But if it has been asked to you that explain that basic types of memory, or 2 types of basic memories, or discuss the different types of memories, then you should have to be consider it as a what? The primary memory and secondary memory. You understand that? But if it is asking with the memory chips, on that time you'll understand that we are talking about, it has been asked about the RAM, ROM and CMOS. Clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you should have to know that. I mean, if this question is asking that, okay, define memory and explain the different types of memory chips, then you should have to list them, and you should have to explain brief. You have to discuss about these three chips in. I mean, with some informations, right? Brief informations, short informations. You should have to tell them that what are they. Like that, if I'm asking to define RAM, so what I say for defining how much you are writing, so exactly you're going to be do this for these three types. So here we have tried to give you some ideas like what is RAM and what are the types of RAMs are there. And this is the another example, that the third example is the 3 plus 5. So how RAM stores the instruction and result for 3 plus 5. So you should have to draw this figure according to the instructions, and you should know that the key codes for each of them, and you should know that actually what are the steps are going to be there to deal with that the instructions are stored into the memory, and how it is going to be executed and put the result onto the memory also. And we have only said that there are different types of DRAMs are there. Among them, among these three, the direct RAM bus is the fastest one. And we are having the SRAM, so we have talked about the cache memory. So the example of the SRAM, so the static RAM. So the cache memory, what is the cache memory? We have discussed in the class, so you can study that, define cache memory, and the level 3 caches, level 1, level 2, and level 3 caches. So explain the different levels of caches. That can be a question. The flash memory, so this question comes, it should come with that the defined flash RAM. So you can tell that, okay, what is that the flash RAM, and what is that why we are telling it's most expensive, and what are the different applications or different devices are going to be known as the flash memory, that you should have to know. These are the capacities, simply you know them. So just revision. And then the next one is the ROM, right? So this is a firmware, right? So if we start up instructions, so if this question comes, it is going to become as the defined ROM and defined CMOS, right? So this is also a firmware, remember that. So this is what actually it is coming. So it can be a question here that, okay, how the RAM is different from the ROM and CMOS, or it can be asked that how the ROM is different from RAM and CMOS. It can ask that how the CMOS is different from RAM and ROM. So you should have to understand that actually what are the differences among them. Okay, so this is really important. You know that the RAM is going to be the volatile memory, right? So the RAM is going to be is capable for read and write both. Okay, so this ROM is not volatile, non-volatile, right, and cannot be changed by the user. What does it mean? It means that the information can be read, but the information cannot be write. Okay, so that is the difference between the RAM and ROM. Okay, so that is what and they are having the RAM is having for the active data, but in case of the ROM, it is for the special instructions, right? So these are the purposes we need the ROM instructions. So that is the difference. And how about the CMOS? The CMOS is also a firmware like that the ROM, but the CMOS has the capability. CMOS is actually also non-volatile. Actually, how this non-volatile? Actually, this is a RAM, kind of a RAM, but this is called as the NVRAM that we have discussed. So the non-volatile RAM, because that there is a CMOS battery is going to be provide the non-stop battery power sources to the CMOS. So that's why it is going to be non-volatile memory. So that is can be compared with the RAM, right? The RAM is a volatile memory, but the CMOS is a non-volatile memory. With that ROM, similarly, it has that the non-volatile, like that the ROM chips are. But in case of that the ROM chip, you cannot write. But in case of the CMOS, with that the update information, if you are actually trying to installing something new onto that computer system, CMOS is going to automatically detect and update the information. So the both read and write is possible, like that the RAM. But the difference between the RAM and CMOS is that RAM, RAM is actually going to be keep that the active data, right? So here, after running an application, when you are quieting the program, on that time RAM from the RAM everything is going to be erased. Or when you shut down the computer system, RAM is going to be erased everything from the RAM. Every data or instructions is going to be removed from the RAM. But in case of CMOS, it is not, right? As because you are actually supplying that constant power with the CMOS battery. So the informations are going to be into the CMOS that is going to be stay there even though the computer is turned off. So that is how that actually you should have to be you should need to be actually compare each of them, that the RAM with the ROM and CMOS, ROM with the RAM and CMOS with the RAM and ROM. So this is the discussions actually you should need to be check out. And this is another thing that the system clock that define the system clock. So yes, it was previously it was the megahertz, right? But these days it is the gigahertz, that the CPU is coming with that gigahertz these days, right? So this is actually much more powerful than the previous processors we had into the computer system. So that is what the gigahertz power that we are getting the billions of bits per second. So that means we are getting the faster computer. That the computer is much more faster than the previous. It is actually capable to access millions, billions of informations, right? At the same time, the multi-scalar system that actually we call the computer system these days, because we know that in the CPU previously it has only one core, the single core processor, that we used to call them actually uniprocessor, but these days we are having the multi-core processor. So that means the multi-core processors are going to be deal with that the more gigahertz, more power, and we know that the faster the clock speed, the faster the computer can process information. So that the informations the C+5 we have discussed. So for the instruction C+5 we need the 4 bits for completing this operation. But these days, as because the computer system is multi-scalar, so that means with the single bit, the multiple instructions can be executed at the same time. So that is what actually it is telling. The faster the clock speed is going to be, the faster the computer can process the information. Here we have talked about the slots, expansion slots and expansion cards. So you should have to know that expansion slots are for installing the external cards to boost up the PC, right? So it is just showing you that the expansion cards are going to have the several names, and the figures are showing that these are the slots and these are the cards that actually we are going to install the external card or expansion card to the expansion slots. So there are some expansion cards are there, so you should have to know their name, and you should have to know that what is the purposes of having this expansion cards. And we have already said that define bus line, and yes, I mean you should have to tell that the bus lines, what is the reason that we need the bus lines, better bus lines, what is the bus width, okay? So what is that the more lanes, faster traffic, so you should have to know them, right? And there are 2 types of buses are there mainly, the 2 basic types. What are the system buses and expansion buses? So you should have to understand that the system buses means here that the main busy area, right? That with the CPU, with the RAM and graphics card, right? So this is the connections are going to be there. That is the most powerful. I mean, most signals, I mean, bits are going to be travel between these 3 devices. So that is actually going to be considered as the system buses, and the expansion buses is for the expansion cards, like that the PCI slots you are having. Then so that the buses are going to be, I mean, if you are giving the expansion cards to the computer system, that is going to be communicate with the rest of the system. So that is what actually you need the expansion buses, so that the CPU can communicate with those expansion cards. So that is actually the expansion buses is talking about. So there are some expansion buses you can see here, like that the PCI component interconnect, PCI universal serial USB, and fireware buses. So that is actually neat. So for the camcorder, I was talking about into that the second lecture last point. So the fireware buses is very, I mean, is useful for the digital camcorders, because that actually you need to transfer the big size data between the camcorders and the computer system. So you need that we already know about the serial technology, that the serial ATA. So that we should have to know that what is the purpose of using the serial ATA, and also that the PCIe, right? So that the PCIe you are having that the express these days we are having that for the graphics card. Yeah. So the different port, what is the port? So define the ports, and what is the D shell connector, DIN connector, you should have to know. Then you should have to know that there are 2 types of ports, the standard ports and the specialized ports. So if you're listing them, then you should have to list them, and then you should have to tell that actually what is that the use of the different ports that actually showing in the figure. It is better that if you're starting from this example figure from the slide number 47, and these are for our understanding, these are for our your own study, but I'll ask you to study this one as a define the universal serial bus port. Okay, so this is you should have to study, this is really important. And this is all, this is the facts, and you should have to know that define cables, so you should have to know the different cables name and their purposes, right, that which purposes actually they are going to be used, which cable, which purposes they're going to be used, that you should have to know. And this is that last one, that define power supply. So you should have to explain that why you need the power supply. In case of the desktop, what type of power supply you use. Okay, in case of the notebooks or handheld devices, that which type of power supply we use. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these are the things you should need to be study carefully for that your first term examination. Okay, and if you have anything today, you got that the questions that what you should need to be study. So if you need any topic revision, then tell me in the tomorrow's class, theory class, so that actually we can have some revision for that. And if we after having the revision, then we'll move to a new lecture, the lecture number 3.